All right. Welcome, everybody, to our weekly show. This is for the week of July 12th, 2020. I am Josh Blazer, and we have another great show for you this week. Joining me, as always, my co-host, indie developer, Sharky. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I am doing great. It is very hot over here. How about where you're at?
Oh yeah, it's extremely hot. Except for but that's on the surface level. When you're underwater, which I stay underwater most of the time, perfectly clear. Cool.
Mm-hmm. And hopefully people can hear us because I'm seeing some alerts on YouTube. We'll see what happens there. But, so, with this week, our main topic is going to be talking about what makes a video game frustrating. And this is something that I've been holding in a rant for the last few nights on. So we'll be getting to that in a few minutes. But let's go over some news and weird games. So, Devolver had their yearly, whatever the heck you want to call it, show yesterday. Did you have a chance to watch it?
No, I didn't even hear about it. I've seen several emails from them, but I haven't even heard of the event.
Well, I guess they did a really good job of marketing it this year because I didn't hear about it until like 3 hours after it was done.
So how long was it? How long ago did it finish?
Sometime yesterday.
So then I didn't hear it for 24 hours ish.
So they announced. Let's see. They did announce Shadow Warrior 3 that I'm kind of meh about right now. I want to see if they're going to do anything more with the RPG or the role-playing shooter elements, which that teaser showed nothing.
Mm.
They put out Carrion. Looks like it's going to be interesting. I think that's due out next week.
I've heard of that one. Not placing it in my mind though.
It's kind of like the you play as the monster kind of game. And there's this game that, like, pixel art where you control, it's a 2D, looks like, adventure platformer, where the twist is that you can launch your weapon, you can use it to propel yourself, or jump around, or things like that.
Sounds like a game for Josh.
Mm-hmm. And let's see, other news. Ubisoft, speaking about other shows that I didn't watch, Ubisoft had their big presentation about 2 hours ago. And
I thought that was supposed to be tomorrow.
Nope, it was today, apparently. And in some brilliant marketing, anyone who logged on could get a free copy of a game. But the problem is that it overloaded their login server, so you couldn't log in, which also meant anyone who was trying to play a Uplay game during that time couldn't access their library. I mean, that is some solid work right there.
GG Ubisoft.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start an event that's going to, and we'll encourage everybody to log into the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And let's not increase our bandwidth or anything. Let's not increase the capability. Let's just leave it the same. It's been fine for the last year or two.
Mm-hmm.
So what's 5 billion more people logging in for a free game going to do it?
And of course, let's tie our games to this service so that if anyone tries to play those games, they can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds kind of more like a Nintendo thing, like for them to do something like that.
Yeah.
But
it does sound like a Nintendo thing.
So they announced more details of the new Assassin's Creed game, which I'll probably get around to playing in 2037. New Watch Dogs game. Oh, they have finally announced, or they officially confirmed, Far Cry 6. And everybody is theorizing it's going to be a prequel to Far Cry, I think, 3? Mm-hmm. The one that gave us that meme about insanity.
Yeah. Question is, will it be any different than Far Cry 3? Or Far Cry 4, or Far Cry 2, or any of the other Far Cries, because they all seem to be...
Well, that would be different from Far Cry 1, but that's because it was completely designed by a completely different team.
Mm-hmm.
So they at least have that going for them.
There we go.
And again, like for me, for these major events, completely I tune it out. Until I can actually have the game in my hands, I don't care about it. Because I have over 2,000 games to play at some point.
Yeah, I mean, like, I like the events and everything, but I mean, they've got to show something real, kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
and most of them don't. And they also have to show some good games, not loot box simulators, and they usually don't.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's like, yeah, am I going to watch a 2-hour presentation for this 1-minute clip? No.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm not.
Unless it's
Not
a Smash
anymore.
Brothers character reveal, then everybody goes nuts.
Yeah.
But speaking about showing something, that's a good segue into this little lovely bit of news. As Ubisoft had a major scuttling of its top brass this past week due to sexual allegations and harassment and all other manner of things. So it's been a really solid week for Ubisoft.
Sounds like they're winning.
Oh, yes. And yeah, we still don't know how this is going to shake up. But definitely like a perfect storm of Ubisoft related news.
Yeah, it's like the perfect storm.
Mm-hmm. Make sure have all that so when you announce Project Triad, that will help your game too, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I will have to hire some people to sexually harass or have them sexually harass me. I'll have to
Mm-hmm.
have them fire me from my nearly kind of single person company kind of thing.
And make sure to release incredibly racist and homophobic statements too. Get all that bad press built up at the same time.
Oh yeah. I gotta do that. Every character in the game will say something racist. Even
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, it may be something racist against their own race
Yeah.
too.
Just do what Helix does and just randomly generate statements and just put them in. Just randomly generate all the horrible statements.
Yeah, there we go.
Doesn't matter what they say, just have them all say it. I hope nobody steals that idea. Let's see. In some very interesting news, the editor-in-chief of Game Informer has officially stepped down, and he is going to work at EA. In just a very weird... I never thought he would go work for them, but Andy McNamara is going to become the new director of comm strategy, which I have no idea what that means.
Where did he work before?
He was the editor of Game Informer.
Ah.
I get to really show my age there because I remember, I think I started following them 5 or 6 issues in. I had a subscription for about a year or two.
I only had a subscription when I got a free subscription from the game. Just being a person who goes to GameStop, basically.
And I think they were around during Funko Land. Now I'm really dating myself with that reference.
Yeah, and when they went, the magazines they had were mostly very uninteresting. But then when they went to digital, it was like, no, I'm done with the magazine. That's worthless.
Yeah, I haven't read a digital magazine in a long time. I have a book. I picked up Tanya Short's book on procedural generation that I want to kind of look at and see what I can reference in my roguelike book. And they sent me a digital copy, and I don't know. I just find it harder to read stuff digitally than I would, be able to relax in a chair in my bed and just have the book in my hand like that.
Oh, I'd rather read stuff digitally any day. I just, the issue is when, I'm not a big magazine person kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But when I do look at a magazine, it's mostly just to waste time and look at pictures kind of thing. And if I have the internet, kind of thing.
And you have smartphones for that now, too.
Yeah. If I have the internet at my fingertips,
Yeah.
I can look at whatever images I want, look up whatever games I want, not looking at a Game Informer magazine.
Mm-hmm. So, I think that's all the major news that I could spot, at least on this end. Anything that caught your eye?
Not that I'm recalling off the top of my head.
All right. So I think with that, let's get to some weird games and see what craziness is coming out, and then we'll get to our main topic. All right.
Yeah, I know that volume and everything's working on the stream. I heard it, but like chat's been dead. Wonder if chat is actually working.
Oh, it says we have 6 people watching. I don't know how many of those are actual people or bots.
Yeah, but I'm wondering if it's letting them post. There's Brian. That confirmed it. They're just not saying anything.
They're all asleep.
They're sleeping. They're
Right.
sleeping at the helm.
Alright, let's see what we have here. I'm pretty sure the entire Discord are just robots.
A lot of beep boops I'm hearing.
Mm-hmm. Alright, there we go. Alright, what do we have that is coming? Oh, this is a game that, just by this thumbnail alone, I'm sure there's going to be a $1 million seller.
So I'll be $2 richer.
There we go.
Well, how much is the game selling for? Is it selling for $4?
I don't know.
$5? Because if it's selling for $2, then he's wrong. It's a lie.
Mm-hmm.
Because Steam and everybody else is going to get their percentages.
This looks like it's a winner right here. This will beat The Last of Us 2, I'm sure.
Yeah. It might beat FNAF 2.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. There's a game. Hopefully it shows up. Oh, here it is. This is one that somebody mentioned on Twitter. One of the people I follow. They say it's a weird bad game. So I'm always in the mood for some weird bad stuff. So we'll see how it works. I already got the press key for it, so I don't know if that's good or bad.
Well, seeing how it's a bad game, that's bad for us watching you and good for you and your masochism.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, I wish I could be a shark bot.
Ooh, Florida Simulator. Eternal Invader. Be threatened by growing crises? Horrors at Castle. We looked at Sheep Island last week. I'm actually running out of indie games. I haven't gotten too many developers sending me copies.
Yeah, you've only got 999,000 itch games left.
You mean itch projects?
Yeah, there we go.
I'm putting in the press key request for Death Stranding. I highly doubt that I get that.
Oh, I guarantee you'll get it. All you gotta do is skip lunch.
Alright. Ronald's Run. Gun Dog Rock Rapid? I'm getting a lot of visual novel sounding games.
Probably not even just sounding names.
Yeah.
Probably actual visual novels.
Let's see. Res Please.
Yeah, we've reformatted the series where we start off with news topics, and then we move on to weird games, and then we just do one topic that is massive. We go for like roughly 2 hours on that topic.
And if we don't, we'll ask the chat for a backup.
Yep, or find a backup on our own.
What is this game?
We've done that the last 2 times, and it's worked out a lot better. Chat's been a lot more active and engaged.
Ooh, Dreamland Solitaire.
Ooh.
Pandora Galaxy.
Would that be the solitaire game of your dreams?
Mm-hmm. What the... I am very nervous to click on that thumbnail at the top.
Which one? The System Phantom
Yeah.
train? I don't think it's going to be bad. I'm serious. That looks kind of like a tactical RPG of some kind.
Alright, let's see. Well, I was not expecting that.
I was not expecting that either.
Paranormal mystery visual novel.
That that,
That's
that
a
is
thing.
very different than that screenshot,
Yeah.
the thumbnail. Because
Let's
Open
see.
Hexagon, yeah, they clearly aren't ripping off anything.
Oh, wait. Yeah.
There's only 3 buttons.
The main idea comes from Super Hexagon.
You think?
No. It's completely original.
Oh yeah, it's
New
very
Super
very.
Hot is coming.
The lawnmower game. Oh,
Oh no.
you know you got to have that one because
Player drive. Ooh. 4
didn't that
different
game already
modes.
come out?
No,
Because
not
I've
yet.
seen that all over YouTube like 2 or 3 years ago.
Could be somebody being inspired by it.
No, no, I'm pretty sure that's the exact game, and I'm pretty sure Jim Sterling covered that thing about 2 or 3 years ago.
Probably. Wait. Lawnmower Man, the next. Why is it showing up on 2 different pages? I don't know if that's a keymailer thing. Oh, it could have just been a keymailer issue. Against the Moon. Well, I just played a Curse of the Moon, so we're already fighting the moon.
And it's a prologue.
Control. Oh, it's a deck builder. Oh, it's a unique deck building system.
We're seeing lots of deck builders.
Well, Slay the Spire kind of blew things up.
Yep.
Oh, something for everybody.
I wonder what the kind of carryover is in between fans of deck builders and fans of like just CCGs. Or
I don't know. I think the tricky thing is that if you're trying to play a deck builder role, if you're a fan of CCGs for the competitive aspect, the deck builders won't really facilitate that.
Well, I mean they're hard as crap, so it is
Yeah.
competitive. It's just competitive against the game, not other people.
Well, isn't that like the 2 perfect games to be next to each other right here?
Exactly.
I don't
You
need to
should click
time
on
that
both
any
of them.
better.
The Jay-Z and the poker.
Ultra Hat Dimension. Let's see. Ooh,
I wonder what that is, the Ultra Head.
I was not expecting that.
It was not either.
There's that game we tried out during the not the last Steam Festival, the one before that. It was kind of like a Mario Party or very basic Smash Brothers. Sharks of Mars. What the
Prologue.
hell? There's a lot of things wrong here.
Yeah.
Ooh, solve immersive VR puzzles.
What the heck is this?
I think that's the next game you're going to play.
It's hard to stay PG on that one.
Oh, this one, I'm actually excited for this one. This is the next game from developers of the Flame in the Flood.
Interesting looking aesthetic from what I see.
I think they're going for kind of like a survival Pikmin style game. Now, I know it's coming to Xbox. Well, I'll see. I joined their site to try to get into the beta, but the beta was only for the Xbox players.
Sounds like you need to get good at Xbox.
My Unreal Pet.
Does that mean it was made in Unity?
Let's see.
There's my Unreal Pet again.
Yeah. Keymailer may need to be getting good.
It definitely needs to get good.
Happy
It's
Crumbs.
been needing to get good for a very, very long time.
This does not seem to be a winner here in terms of some great games. Let's see.
Counter Pixel Go Pixel Striker. What was that?
I don't know.
Like That looks like a loser there.
We can just sum up the weird game saying with
Exactly.
Meet Girls. Soul Divide, Sword of Darkness. Oh, this is bringing an older game back.
When you said Meet Girls, my mind instantly went to Super Meat Boy, but with girls. And then I see it, it's like, oh, not that Meet Girls.
Komodo Steve, Janitor on Fire.
Yeah, that one sounds like a winner.
Love these thumbnails. I think we looked at this game before.
Probably. It doesn't look good.
Looks like a very generic 2D shooter.
With a lot of assets.
Brain Test. Startup Valley Adventure. Alright.
Why? Look at the thumbnail of the Startup Valley.
Yeah, I was wondering that.
Something around the ankles.
How about this thumbnail for Fashion Business?
That's very fashionable.
Huh. Wait, Rock of Ages 3 is already coming out? They just did the demo for like a month ago.
They might have waited to release the demo until right before it was ready.
Because there are some very major bugs I found with that demo.
Let's
see. Endless Battle. Rain Swept. Rain Swept's emotional story. Let's see. It's composed by that. Release on... Ooh, lots of pine trees, coffee, and rain.
No, I can't. Pine trees is like the main selling point to me with a game. Like, if it's got pine trees, I'm pretty much going to buy it. You're the same way, aren't you, Josh?
Yeah. I need all the rain.
Yeah.
Ooh, Kebab Simulator. It steals... Wait, why does this sound familiar?
Artificer?
Wait, I thought this game came out already. I swear I saw this being released like a year or so ago.
It might have been. Maybe it was released on early access and now this is its full release or something.
Alright. But I think with that, let's get to our topic.
Which we need to clarify that this was all Josh's idea. And some people are going to get triggered. Because Sekiro will probably be named several times during it. And there goes trigger number 1.
Alright. So, the reason why I've been thinking about this topic is that over the last few days, I've been playing a combination of some very challenging titles. We had Curse of the Moon 2, Primal Light, No Delivery. And one of the things that I found, and this is something that I see from a lot of indie developers I've been willing to rant about, is that when developers say, like in the opening screen or in the first part of the game, this is a very challenging game or very difficult game, expect to lose or die, it always seems code for this is a frustrating experience that you're going to have to spend hours to try and get halfway decent at. And there's a very thin line between a game that is challenging to play and a game that is frustrating to play.
A
And
very thin line, but a very broad line at the same time.
yeah, that's safely extreme.
Yeah, exactly.
And like I can look at something like Primal Light on oh, voice is dying, that's not safely extreme. You can look at the difference between Primal Light's design versus Curse of the Moon 2's design. And the more I played Curse of the Moon 2, the less I liked it. And Ashar, you were watching me play it last night. And did you notice that the level design seemed to get very trolly as you got later into it?
Which one was that?
That was the Castlevania game.
The one with wall hearts or something?
Yeah.
I didn't notice that because I think I was busy during that time and I wasn't paying the most attention during that time.
Mm. Well, the thing that I was like paying attention as I was playing through Blood of the Moon is that there are plenty of sections in that game that are just annoying to go through, such as they'll throw enemies at you that will run at the player and you can't dodge them. If you hit them first, it takes 2 hits to kill them, so they're still gonna hurt you. And there's like 5 or 6 of them in the span of a single room. And it just got to the point where unless I cheese it with using the invulnerability power, you were just going to take massive health damage. And the game seemed to be designed to kind of make it almost against its own design in a way. The moment,
I remember that now.
Yeah. The moment that like really stood out to me was I think level 4, which was the ice level. And only one character is kind of resistant to ice physics, everyone else isn't. And they actually make you do platforming, or committed platforming, on ice physics. And I have never seen a game do that. In all the platformers I've played, I've never seen one try to go that extreme in terms of difficulty.
Yeah. The thing I was saying about earlier about there being a thin/thick line in between the two kind of thing is that it's very easy to make a hard game.
Yep.
Extremely easy, because Alpha 1 of pretty much any game is hard.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's no tutorial, no onboarding at all, no streamlining of mechanics, no UI work, none of this stuff. Like when you played Alpha 2.1 of Project Triad, there was that mechanic where it showed you, X's or check marks on the units kind of thing, right?
Yep.
Showing you if you were going to win or lose. Well, that wasn't in Alpha 1. It was just you had to do all the calculations in your head within a limited amount of time.
And people love to do that.
Yeah, and it was definitely harder.
Yeah. And what you just said there about how there is that thin line is very important for developers to understand, because many developers, and I've seen this in the past, have fallen into this trap that if I want my game to be challenging, let's just make it as hard or as annoying to play as possible, and ergo it will be a great game.
Mm-hmm.
And like Darkest,
I've seen a developer I'm currently watching because he's really good at art kind of thing. He's purposely making his game frustrating and hard. It's basically he's basically kind of going for a Bennett Foddy kind of vibe kind of thing.
No.
And basically the way it works is your character doesn't move kind of thing, but you have to platform, and the way you platform is you kind of like, I don't know what the exact mechanic is, but you kind of like shoot an arrow up and it arcs, and your character follows that arc.
Okay, so it's kind of like a grapple mechanic.
Yeah, kind of. And it would, and you can't see where you're shooting at, kind of thing. exactly. And the thing is you go up and you go to the next screen kind of thing, and then it doesn't checkpoint, and then when you mess up and everything and you overshoot something, you could fall down 3 or 4 or 5 screens kind of thing and just lose all that progress. And I'm like, shouldn't you checkpoint? He's like, no, I'm making it frustrating on purpose. I was like, oh, facepalm.
So you're doing platforming. I'm assuming this is technically going to be committed movement, because once you shoot the arrow, you can't, cancel it or do anything like that.
Oh, it's zero movement. You are just at the discretion of the arrow. The arrow is the only movement.
And the arrow has physics to it, or some kind of like realistic physics.
Yeah, I think he's intending the main interface for mobile, but he's also I think he's planning on doing a PC too. But he wants just one touch kind of thing, like Angry Birds. Whether you do it with a mouse or keyboard or a touch screen, you can just do that one thing, and that's the entire game. Is just do that one kind of throw kind of thing, and that's where your character moves with.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like he's aiming it for the YouTuber rage audience.
Yeah, because he's aiming it for Bennett Foddy, which is what is the YouTube, and he definitely has said stuff about, getting YouTubers to cover it. So, I mean, like, he's definitely going for that kind of thing. And, I just feel like it's bad. It has beautiful art in it. It's a beautiful game. And, like, I wanted to play it until the point where he said that he's trying to make it as frustrating as possible. I was like, okay, I don't want to play it anymore.
Yeah. I saw this game called Jump King that I think came out either last year or a few months ago. Again, time has no meaning around here. That is also going for that vibe. It's all committed-based jumping, and if you mess up, you can lose like 30, 40 minutes of progress at any given moment.
Yeah, I mean, not putting checkpoints in there makes it harder.
Of course.
I mean, you can make a game that is, a platformer that is fairly easy to play, very little challenge and everything, and just make the maps like 40, 50 minutes long and make one hit kill you and put no checkpoints in there, and it will be hard. It will be frustrating, and people will struggle to get to that map, because if you got to play a map for 40 minutes, it's constant platforming, even if it's easy kind of thing, you're going to lax off at one point, and you're going to die.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought up checkpoints, because in Curse of the Moon, what they do, of course, is that if you lose all your characters and you lose a life and you go back to a checkpoint, they purposely have set the checkpoint for the boss behind the most annoying section of the said level. So every time you lose your characters, you have to repeat that section, and hopefully not lose health or lose a character, so then you get back to the boss and then you die again, and you have to do it again. That's not annoying at all.
No,
such as
not,
in the
not one bit.
And remember those enemies I mentioned who you can't kill in a single hit but can just run at you? There's like 8 of them in the section for the level 2 boss. And you have to repeat that every time you die.
Yeah.
And
you don't want to you don't want to mess with checkpoints. You want to give people checkpoints, just like you want to teach players how to actually play your game. Don't make your game artificially harder because you're going to frustrate them. Don't, that isn't good game design. That is bad game design. That is, or a lack of game design. And we see so many people that make their first game kind of thing, and it doesn't have checkpoints. It doesn't have onboarding. Newbies are not generally good game designers. And you shouldn't be aiming for that in your finished game. You should be looking for something fit and polished, something that, is challenging if you want to go for the challenging thing, but not frustrating, because frustrating is a pain point. And we've talked about this before, about players only have a limited number of pain points, and then they're going to get off. I mean, like, if you want to make a game hard, just make it every time you click the UI, downwards, it goes up by after it goes down by 1, it goes up by 2. Kind of thing. So that and anytime you press up, it'll go up by 1 and then down by 2.
Or just reverse the controls randomly.
Yeah, reverse the controls randomly, and it'll be very hard to play. And it'll be a very rage bait for YouTube, and everything. Yeah. But it'll be a horrible, horrible game.
And with, as you said, like, you don't want to design your game to be frustrating. And like we said, there's that fine line between challenging and just plain frustrating and difficult to play. Like with Primal Light, the platforming in Primal Light is more advanced than Curse of the Moon 2. There's more movement tech. It's obviously there's more to do in that game. But the controls are incredibly responsive. The game pretty much allows... The checkpoints are somewhat fair. It's still hard platforming, but I never felt frustrated while I was playing that game.
And to WRF Studios there, he says that, there's too many games these days that fool around testing players' patience. I don't know if that's true. Like,
I think a few years ago it was.
I think what's true is there, I think what we need a clarification is what is a game, and, some people consider stuff they make in a game jam a game, and it's not. That's a prototype. A lot of things, a lot of people consider the things on itch.io games, and a lot of those are prototypes. There's a few games on there, but most of them are prototypes. There's a lot of really cheap games on Steam that go for $1, $2, $5 that are, again, prototypes, not games. But when you're talking about games, I mean, there are some that do that, like Bennett Foddy kind of thing and stuff, but I don't think there's all that many because, I mean, they can't afford to go to the next game with it because they have to make their money back. When you're talking about a prototype or whatever, there's not much money in it, so they can just go on to the next thing because they weren't, they didn't put much work into it, so they're not on the hook to make it succeed. Where a real game, an actual game that had a year or multiple years of development, they are on the hook to and have like teams and everything. They are on the hook to make it succeed, or they're not going to be in business anymore. They can't just necessarily go to the next game, kind of thing.
Now, one thing that I want to clarify, because I know if we don't bring this up, somebody is going to bring this up, is the idea or the fact that these games are designed around a high skill level. Again, Get Good will probably be mentioned at least 20 times in the next hour. And with Curse of the Moon, the game is explicitly designed around very fixed or set patterns for how everything plays. And there are going to be people, it is somewhat Kaizo-like in that regard, that if you do everything perfectly, the game is easy. And that tends to be the justification and kind of the defense that fans and developers will have of these games, that there is an ideal way to play it. There is that perfect, one strategy that if you do it, all the difficulty goes away. But the problem with that kind of design is that it greatly restricts the number of people who are willing to put up with the game to learn it and get to that point.
Yeah, it's like if you do things exactly this specific way, if you jump here, run over here, jump over here, run over here, attack, then special attack, and then one regular attack, duck, jump, and then bob and weave, it's easy as crap. But if you do one thing different or you do anything different,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to lose a lot of HP if not die, kind of thing. And it's where there's only one path forward, meaning that it's basically a game for a robot. A robot to set a set path, and execute it every turn, kind of thing, rather than a human actual player enjoying the game. Because humans are not robots,
or are they?
They might be, looking at the chat.
And this is something that we see from speedrun-based games. I do wonder if a lot of these frustrations come from people trying to design speed-run-friendly games. That when you're playing a game at that level, it is all about perfect execution. And if you go off the rails, usually that run is going to end in failure. Mm-hmm. But again, it raises that problem. Do I design my game for a speedrunning community, or do I design my game to be as accommodating as possible for as wide of an audience as I can?
Well, I'll put it this way: the speedrunning community wouldn't exist had the other not exist.
Mm-hmm.
If Mario was a frustrating, horrible designed game that you had to be absolutely precision on everything, Nintendo wouldn't be where it is today.
Yep.
And if Nintendo wasn't where it is today, speedrunning probably wouldn't even be a thing. Yep. It would just not exist.
And to give you guys a little bit more of an example, I'm starting to really love the achievement tracker in Steam. It's been very fascinating for me to kind of keep track of these games, all the ones that we've been playing. So, Curse of the Moon 2 right now, in terms of its player base, less than half the people managed to beat the first episode of that game. That's what I showed on stream the other night. That stage is 1-3, and then you go to New Game Plus. So, think about that for a second. That less than half the people who actually bought the game are even able to finish the game at the normal difficulty.
Yeah, the thing that I've learned about the achievement system and everything is it doesn't count people who hasn't booted the game. Because we have 127 cells, but 100 of those never booted the game. So we only had 27 to actually play it. Yet I think we have something like 50, 60, 70% on some of the first achievements, kind of thing. So it only counts those who have actually played the game, which I find interesting and a good thing in general.
Yeah.
For analytic purposes.
And to Mr. Elwood's point about which is the bigger audience and which will sell more, I think speedrunning culture and designing around speedrunners, I think there's a topic there. I just don't know if it's big enough to be a major topic for the show. But we have seen games that are predominantly aimed at the speedrunning audience. There was that game that I showed, I want to say 3 weeks ago. It was the one with the swinging around with the realistic physics. You had to go through all those obstacles and stuff like that. And again, it's very tricky to know these markets because you can't really theory craft what your player base is after the game is released. And with a game like that, and I think when you brought up Nintendo, I think Nintendo is a really good example of kind of doing it right. Nintendo knows that not everybody who buys their games wants the super extreme difficult challenges.
Oh yeah, they absolutely learned that with Mario 2. That's the reason why we never got it.
Yeah.
The real Mario 2, because the real Mario 2 was super hard and everybody hated it. And they absolutely, went to town on that game and they absolutely hated it, which is the reason why they got the rights to, what was it, Doki Doki or something? And then put their Mario characters in it and then used that for Mario 2.
And
then many years later, the real Mario 2 came out as Mario Lost Levels.
Yes, Ryu, exactly. But like to Elwood's point, kind of is like this. Let's say we have a brutally difficult game that, let's say there's an audience of 500. Let's go with small numbers for this. That if I make this game as frustrating and as difficult as possible, I can guarantee 500 people are going to buy this game. But if we make our game more accessible, more approachable, we could open up this market to maybe, let's say, 1,500 people. But there's less of it's not as guaranteed. People still have to find it. People still need to look it up. Is it better to go for a guaranteed niche audience, or aim for a larger player base that may not be 100% guaranteed?
I don't think any audience is guaranteed. The only thing that I see guaranteed is not game modes or genres or anything like that. The only thing that I see guaranteed is licensed material. So if you buy the license to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, you buy the license to X-Men, you buy the license to Marvel, you buy the license to Game of Thrones, you buy any of these licenses, you're guaranteed, people to come in from, those places. You buy Star Wars, or you have a big enough studio like EA, Take-Two,
or you have a name. Don't forget that. Like a major part of the Curse of the Moon selling point is Koji Igarashi. I'm pretty sure I just butchered that last name. And of course, him being the director or the executive producer on Symphony of the Night. And why, of course, Shenmue 3 got a lot of buzz, because Yu Suzuki was working on that.
Mm-hmm. Or you have a really amazing game before, like FTL, and then Into the Breach just sells instantly, kind of thing.
And again, you cannot just look at a game in a vacuum from the outside to figure out what it did right. And that's a perfect segue to bring up Darkest Dungeon. Darkest Dungeon sold really well as a brutally difficult game. And a lot of people felt that it succeeded because it was just brutally difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And even with Darkest Dungeon, there are still some QOL issues with that design that I spoke to Chris about, and they couldn't fix those issues as to how they had programmed the game. But it still did really well as being a challenging title. And a lot of that came down, and they still struggle with it, with balancing those options. It is brutally difficult, but it is a game about you learning how to deal with that.
Yeah. I don't think difficulty as a whole has ever been a selling point, kind of thing.
To the masochist, probably.
Maybe. But you have your limits as a masochist.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what difficulty games does is not be a selling point, but rather be a market that you're targeting. And it seems like a lot of that market has gotten away with murder, literally.
Mm-hmm.
And made some really bad design games and gotten away with it in we did that on purpose because it's supposed to be really, really hard. And, while, massive developers can get away with that kind of thing, like Sekiro, smaller people that nobody knows, they do that. And everybody's going to crap on them very right off the gate kind of thing.
And to build on that point, here's another big no-no for indie devs. Don't purposely announce your game is bad. Because we've seen developers do that. The ironic, oh, this game has horrible controls, and I left in all the bugs, and, we're just trying to emulate classic games. No, don't do that. There are too many games out right now to just say, oh, this game is, I'm purposely making a bad game. Give me $30.
Yeah. I mean, like, it just pains me. It truly does pain me because every copy of those games that actually sell, mine, they don't sell very many, usually, unless they're from a big studio. But every copy is it's like a shot through my heart kind of thing. It's like, how can that game succeed? And like games like my last one and like other Star's game,
Vision Soft Reset.
Vision Soft Reset, just not sell at all. And I know the reason is aesthetics, because it's aesthetics is absolutely key, and aesthetics overrides like so many things right now, and it's truly sad. And it's also sad that people are making really, really bad, horrible games that could be good if they did work to them. I mean, Sekiro could have been an amazing game. And because I was very, very interested in it at first, and you remember that in that first like 2 hours, I was like, yeah, let's get on this kind of thing. And then after about the 2 hour mark, it was like,
and the problem,
it just kept on going down after that.
And the problem, of course, is that with a lot of these games, that people will assume it's kind of like the Emperor's New Clothes, that if it's frustrating, if it's difficult to play, surely it's good. If it's meant to be a very hard game, then it must be well designed. But like we said, there's a very thin line between challenging and frustrating. And a major point about this, and I think Sekiro kind of fits with some of the games that we've been playing, is that Sekiro is designed around one way of playing. That's it. Anyone who says otherwise is lying to themselves. This is a game that you have
game
to...
for bots.
Exactly. When you crack that code of Sekiro, you break the game. And that's not hyperbole. I beat that game. I broke that game. If you remember when I did my dissecting design on it, I showed footage of me beating every major boss easily. I mean, not just easily, I mean I dominated every one of those fights. And somebody will argue, well, that's you getting good. And I got my phone ringing in the background just in time as I'm getting good on that front. But it's a case of, what did it take to get to that point? What was that?
Memorization.
Yep. And again, it's just simple. It's pattern recognition and repetition. That was not easy to say. And one of the things
Simon says.
Yep. And that's not the same of what Dark Souls and Demon Souls did. In those games, you have different ways of winning. And ultimately, I think this is where we see kind of that line between challenging and frustrating. We can define it a little bit better. That in the Souls games, there are multiple builds you can make for your character. You can summon people for help. There are multiple options to play this game. There's not just one way. And for games that end up being on the frustrating side, they come down to this. Can you play this game 100% perfectly? Yes? Then this is going to be an easy game for you. If you can play it 99% perfectly, go away. You're not going to be able to beat it.
But Dark Souls, on the other hand, you can play it, probably 70% and get all the way through it pretty, not easily, but you could,
because
if you kept on trying it, you could easily get to the end eventually, kind of thing. Not, it won't be easy to get there, but you can easily get there by the end if you keep on going, kind of thing. Sekiro, there ain't no getting to the end unless you fall into direct line, follow this direct string kind of thing where there's only one way to beat it kind of thing. You have to, match the bot that was able to beat it kind of thing. And if you're able to do that bot's path, you can beat it. And it's easy as crap because you're just following the bot's path and it's meant to be easy that way.
Yep.
But if you're not following the bot's path, there basically ain't no beating it kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't consider imitating a bot as getting good kind of thing. I would consider that emulation of a bot. If a bot can beat a game, does that mean, if a bot can beat a game, I mean, what does that say for you as a gamer kind of thing? Like,
I mean, when you look at speedrunners, they have task bots set up for a lot of those games.
And we're not talking about a smart bot either. We're talking about a bot that just, says, move here, press this button, move here, press this button. We're not talking about a bot that, is AI controlled or anything and it learns as it plays. We're talking about just strictly basic instructions all the way through, like Simon.
Yeah.
Simon is a perfect example of, this kind of bot. You could just put this kind of bot on Simon and just input the, what that, say Simon gives you the next, say it just lays out this list of, here comes this next, this is going to be the next 10,000, pushes kind of thing. Program that into the bot, and the bot executes it every time.
I'm pretty sure I used that exact solution for one of Zach's programming puzzles. It was like the worst way of solving it. Just tell it to repeat every command as possible. And then he learned to set up as a random pattern in the future games, and that just completely screwed me. And again, there are people, and I'm sure when this goes up in record form, there are going to be people going to argue saying that Sekiro is a great game, that these challenging games, getting over it. What's another one? I'm trying to think of. There's one I want to bring up in a second. What was that?
Untitled Good Game.
Yeah.
Goat Simulator.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I would put them in the same discussion as this, or at least when we're comparing to some of these.
Well, I think they're the same discussion. They're just to a lesser extent.
But the point I was trying to get at is that there are people who are going to say that these games work because they reward that level of mastery. But the problem, again, is that you want to keep the player invested to get to that point. If basically your progression is like straight line and then just dovetails, and there's no way to get around it other than that one option, a lot of people aren't going to deal with that. And there are going to be those who will argue, well, then they weren't true fans, or, they didn't get good, so who cares about them?
But they were not true fans that would sacrifice everything, including gameplay, to follow this super linear combat system. It's... people complain about linear stories, but, Sekiro has a linear combat system.
Yes, it does.
It is as on rails as it can be, or you're dead. If you're not on the rails, you're ran over by the train.
It is a step below Karateka, if you remember that game.
No, I don't remember that one.
That is a QTE action game where it's just all you following the prompts by the enemies. And there's no other input that you can do. So, I remember, if you remember that game, Thrusty's Ship, that we played on stream.
Oh, yeah. And I think Boardfan is still salty about that one.
Yeah. And this is, again, one of those examples. Thrusty's Ship, from a design standpoint, not a playability or approachability standpoint, but just from a basic core gameplay loop, is a good game. It has an interesting design to it. It's unique in that regard.
Yeah, the first world or whatever was really good. I was like, yes, I'm really into this game. And then you got into the second world. And then my opinion changed very quickly. And you got into the third world and, ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
And the reason for that is that the difficulty of that game is so extreme. And again, there are people who played it and they loved it. I'm sure every person who tested Thrusty's ship loved that game. And they probably said that there was no problems with it.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the
Well, they might have said the first level was too easy. The first world was too easy.
But here's the sad truth. Looking at the reviews of this game on Steam, it has 6 user reviews and it's been out for over a year.
And how many of those are negative?
Let's see. This is weird. There's a lot of reviews on here.
That's
the one with the product
product
received for free.
Yeah, free keys don't count towards a score.
Yeah.
Only paid keys. So there could be, it says 6 reviews, but you scroll down and there's like 200, but only 6 of them were paid keys.
Yeah. And all the reviews I'm seeing right now are positive for the game. But again, there's that issue when it comes to challenging and frustrating. You can have 50 people who love your game and 5,000 people who absolutely hate your game.
And if you only get 6 reviews, and how long?
A year, or over a year at this point.
Over a year, your game has failed.
Mm-hmm.
You unless you spent a budget of like only your time and only, I don't know, a week or so, you didn't break even.
Mm-hmm.
Because that is so low money. And that's assuming they bought it at full price.
Yeah.
And if they didn't buy it at full price, then you might have had, enough to break even if you had just your time for solo development for about 2 days.
A thought just popped into my head when we were talking about Nintendo. There's something that I realized that I don't see from the independent space that I'm just wondering why. And that is this idea of having the post-game optional challenges. Although, not talking about a new game plus per se, but what I mean is that if you look at Nintendo's games, specifically the Mario titles, they will always have, this is the final level of the game. You beat this, you get the ending, you win, you save Peach, you beat Bowser, hip hip hooray. And then if you go further than that, now we're introducing the super challenging optional, this is for the hardcore players we know who are playing this game. Go nuts, can you beat this? And I'm just surprised why we don't see more indie developers go that route. You think it's a scope or a just like a game or like not able to like build their game around kind of like extending it beyond that?
I think the main reason why we don't see it is because developers have a very, eye for their game kind of thing. So they're either going for the normal Mario thing or they're going for the after Mario thing.
Mm-hmm.
And they just target the one thing. So they're not targeting both audiences, they're targeting one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, probably like a developer who I think did a decent job of that would be a Yacht Club Games with Shovel Knight. That they have, the optional bonus challenges, optional difficulty, things along those lines. Yeah, I know, Mojo.
Yeah.
Yep, and that's kind of the issue here, that I'm surprised that more indie developers, like, considering how much they love Nintendo and some of these games, don't think about and I think what you said there, Shar, is a good point, that they look at their game as being razor focused on one specific audience. And like we've said, like, it is important to understand who your core demographic is. That is the basis of your core gameplay loop. But the games that I think tend to do better, or the games that become more well known, understand that we can still do things to make our game more inviting to players. Love it or hate it, one of the main reasons Celeste blew up so much as it did was the very fact of that assist mode. That if it didn't have that assist mode,
that game would have been dead in the water, probably.
Pretty much, yeah. It would not have been on the stage at the Game Awards without that assist mode. Absolutely not.
Yeah. And, that's a really good point that I would like to build on to, because, you need to build your genre for the audience that you're building it for, kind of thing. Like I built my tactical RPG for tactical RPG fans. But I also looked at all kinds of reviews for all kinds of different tactical RPGs, and I looked at the negative ones, and pretty much all the negative reviews, a vast majority of them, not all of them, but a vast majority of the negative reviews was, I had no clue how to play this game. Tactical RPGs are too hard to play. I don't like this. It's too hard to play. All this kind of thing. And I was like, well, what if we took a tactical RPG and just taught people better without hand-holding? Because, that's the other thing. There was a tutorial, but it was 2,000 pages of text, and I skipped it, or I didn't understand it, kind of thing. So the question is, it was a matter of whether they weren't getting taught at all. They were getting taught very poorly. They were being taught the bare minimum of stuff, but never any of the times were they pretty much ever taught well and taught fully, kind of thing. So if we could nail that, then we could apply to a wider range of audience, which was the reason why I tested with people who were fans of tactical RPGs at the same time of people that hated tactical RPGs, as well as people who were alright with tactical RPGs, as well as people who didn't know what a tactical RPG was. I tested with all those people, and through all the integrations of how we taught the tutorials and everything else, everybody we tested with ended up loving the game by the end. And, I brought them also in stages, because, I brought the more hardcore tactical RPGs in at first, players, and I, slowly, kind of went farther and farther off of the, hardcore each time to, get, feedback and everything. Because, even if the one that, if I had brought in somebody who was, new to it, kind of thing, and or hated it to begin with, kind of thing, that would have been bad, because number one, it would vastly shifted the whole design. Number two is, even if it didn't shift the whole design, they would get used to it, and they would not have the same complaints anymore, because they know how to do it now.
Yeah. And this is, again, one of those other things people will bring up when we talk about this. That they'll complain that a game is too easy. Or they'll say, this is too simple, so it's obviously a bad game. But as we've, if there's a thin line between a challenging and a frustrating game, there is a very wide line between a game that is simple and a game that is streamlined. And it is hard to make a streamlined game.
Yeah. I know with our last game, the word of the day, Chromasia, that when we got to the end of testing, or towards the end of testing, we had the hardcore tactical RPG player saying, this game is too easy, it needs to be hard, kind of thing. And we had the softcore, I'm not experienced with this game, saying it's a little bit too hard, kind of thing. And that, I was like, that might be the happy medium, because it's safely extreme.
And that right there, what you just described, is something that we see a lot of developers struggle with. That idea of, all my hardcore players don't like my game because they say it's too easy. And all the core gamers don't like it because they say it's too hard. So, where do I go? Where do I go from here with that knowledge?
Yeah, and where I thought was that it's perfect where it is. Because through my experience with playing it, when my play testing, is I tested it to make sure that if I was skilled enough, I could go through every level to a certain point and never lose. Mm-hmm. At the same time, if and that with no punishment mechanics and everything, with players being able to keep all their experience and gold from losing a map, they can go in a second time and they'll have a lot easier time playing it, kind of thing. And every stage after that. So like that's what I was kind of going off of, is like if I can beat the I could beat the first 8 or 9 stages without ever losing, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And it didn't punish anybody for losing, and the lesser players could lose 1 or 2 matches and go through pretty consistently without much of a problem, and the hardcore people were able to get this enough challenge that they didn't ever lose, kind of thing, but they didn't it wasn't impossibly hard for them. They didn't have to go and grind and everything to beat it. I was like, and the hardcore players saying it's too hard. The more casual players are saying it's too hard, rather, and the other one said it's too easy. And I was like, I think this is a perfect balance right here. Sad thing is I didn't carry that on after the next 8 levels because I was really super burned out on playing. Mm-hmm. And that's one thing I want to correct in the remake and everything. And because I think that I did really nail the balance for those first 8 levels, kind of thing. And at the same time, there were several other issues with balance that was off, but like I think that was on target. But the fact that I'm going to have to correct the other things means I'm going to have to completely screw up everything that I already have and start over, kind of thing. But I think I liked those first 8 maps, kind of thing, and the way they balanced out, kind of thing. And I want to kind of continue that all the way through. Mm-hmm. And but I focused on onboarding in such a way that it was able to teach the players without them knowing that they're being taught. And because of that, a lot of YouTubers completely dismissed the game. They said, "Oh, this game's too easy. I know exactly what I'm doing."
Yeah, and and that definitely comes from a lack of an understanding game design. And that's one of the things about this kind of discussion, or when we talk about onboarding and playability, which again, that's another design topic, that if it works, most people don't notice it. When it doesn't work, they're going to complain for the next 10 hours about it.
But YouTubers feel like if it works, then there's nothing to the game because it wasn't hard. Mm-hmm. They knew what to do right off the bat. So I mean, they figure if you're not having to learn stuff on your own, if you're not having to figure out the game on your own, then there's nothing to the game. It's like no, that's just having a good tutorial in the game. And the game doesn't mean there's nothing to the game. I mean, Mario had a good tutorial. But you never noticed the tutorial. Nobody ever notices the tutorial in Mario.
Yeah, of course.
They Mario did very, very simple thing that taught you how to play. They put your guy right on one side of the screen, with a wall behind it. It's like you can't move this way. You can only move this way. So let's look at the controller. What's the logical thing to do? Well, there's an arrow that puts over this way. Let's put it over that way. Yeah. Oh, it moved. Oh, there's an enemy coming at me. There's this Goomba coming at you. This single Goomba that is no challenge at all. What do I do? And it's like, well, there's 2 buttons here. Let me try pressing one of them. Nothing happened. Let me try pressing the other one. Jumps. Okay, let me jump over the Goomba. Yeah. Bam. And you just taught probably about, 60% of Mario's mechanics right there?
in the first 5 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And don't forget, that's another thing I love and the developers love to do. They throw you into a game and say, here, go do something. Oh, you died, ha ha, try it again.
Yeah.
And, like, here's the game that, if you talk about Sekiro being a sore spot, here's the other game. The La Mulana franchise. La Mulana 1 and 2 are probably some of the finest Metroidvania-style games out there, but they're also some of the worst games when it comes to approachability and onboarding. They throw you into the space where rules and elements, you may not even realize what something does or what you're even supposed to do. And it is a game that is built entirely on having a player guide or strategy guide nearby to help clue you in on how to play it.
Or YouTubers.
Yep. And it's a great game. And again, when you look at the reviews, according to Steam, it has 413 very positive reviews on Steam. And people will point to that. I'm sure somebody will argue with me saying, it has all these positive reviews, so, you're wrong. But again, there's that question. How many more people could have bought and enjoyed this game if the onboarding and just general design were made more approachable?
Yeah, I mean, like, saying whatever the masses say makes it, X. Then, Twitter accusations,
Mm-hmm.
Political stuff. Like, everybody's wrong because everybody's right. I mean, because, like 50% of the people say, this person should be, in this political office. 50% say that they should be in this, person in the political office, which means there's two masses, and they're conflicting with each other, which means they're both right and they're both wrong by that logic. So, it's not, you can't go off of what the masses say. If the masses say the sky is red, doesn't mean the sky's red.
And like we said, there are people who will defend games like La Mulana, like Thirsty Ship, like Sekiro, like any hard game. Again, with the ubiquitous
Sekiro.
Yep, get good. And the problem, again, is what is required to get good. Is it an example of learning the design of the game? And again, this is why I like so much of roguelike design. Because it is a challenge on the player to learn. It's not the game being required to be played one way. Again, you obviously play Monster Train, Slay the Spire like I did.
Yeah, I love both of those. Especially Monster Train.
And you can win those. There is no perfect way to play those games. And one of the reasons why it feels fair when you lose is that sometimes you will lose and there is not a damn thing you could have done to avoid it. But conversely, you could have another run that is entirely different. When you play a game like La Mulana or any of the other games we mentioned, there is one way to win. There is absolutely, positively one way that you will beat those games. It will be easy. It will be like you did absolutely nothing to do it. But what does it take to get to that level?
Well, nothing if you know all the strategies without, all the exact movements and everything you need to do without ever playing it. Yeah. But most people don't know that unless they watch a lot of YouTube.
And are they really going to put up with a game enough to get to that point?
I mean, at that point, it's like a visual novel. A visual novel with no choices. You're just putting, you're following this one direction. In case of a visual novel, you're just hitting the next page. But, it's still going this one single direction. And you're just, as long as you're going that single direction, you're doing good, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Where games like Dark Souls and, Monster Train and Slay the Spire, there's many ways to go, and there's many dead ends, and those dead ends, in some games, like Slay the Spire and Monster Train, change based on, procedural generation. Yeah. But, Monster Train did a lot better job at this than Slay the Spire, because Monster Train let you know what was coming. They told you right off the beginning. Yeah. This is the boss you're going to have to fight. This is the final boss. This is what you're going to have to fight against. Be prepared for that. Be prepared that he's going to, completely wipe out all of your magic cards, or he's going to he's going to debuff the heck out of you. So make a build according to that is going to allow you to win, or give you a chance to win. Yeah. Where Slay the Spire didn't do that. Slay the Spire just said, "Don't be a random boss. Have fun. Hope you make it through."
You took the build at the boss counters? Yeah, you're done. Thanks for spending the last hour playing.
Yeah, you built a deck solely around magic and energy and everything, and he's like, every time you do magic or energy based stuff, it gets 10 times harder.
Enjoy.
Yeah, yeah. Enjoy your absolute slaughter, because anything you can do to damage this guy is just going to make him 100 times harder to beat.
Yep. Yep, and to WRF's point, yeah, like, you can have ways to make things better. You can have these optional or smart ways of allowing the player to figure it out. Mm-hmm. But if that is the only way, and that's kind of the point that we talk about, that if there is only one way to beat this boss and everything else ends in failure or it's just frustratingly difficult, a lot of people aren't going to stick around. And again, bringing back to Sekiro, many of those bosses are easy if you know the exact way to win. And again, and this is what makes this discussion very challenging, is that all games are like that. All the Dark Souls games are like that, that you have to figure out what this boss does in order to be able to beat them. Mm-hmm. But where that difference is can the player succeed in multiple ways? Can the player use an arrow build? Can they be a fire mage, a lightning mage? Can they summon help? Can they use an item? Are there other measures to get around this fight except for that specific one?
And Dark Souls did that really good. Yes. Because no matter what you did, you could always win. It wasn't going to be easy.
Or wasn't going to be optimal.
Yeah, it wasn't going to be optimal, but you could always do it. Mm-hmm. if you did, no matter what build you did, no matter what way you attacked, you could still find a way to beat it. Mm-hmm. Whether you use a sword, whatever weapon, mm-hmm. Whatever thing, you could find a way to beat it. There was a way to beat it. Where in Sekiro, the issue is you couldn't.
There was one way.
You had to use one specific weapon, one specific special move, one specific this, and maybe you had to use multiple of them, but it was still only one specific path. You had to use this specific thing on, when he was using this attack, and you had to use this one specific thing when he was using this specific attack. And it was just a game of memorization and having a checklist, and Simon Says.
Yeah. And to Mojo's point about game kicking your butt there, again, it depends on where that challenge is. Something like Super Meat Boy, or very challenging platformers, that the challenge is on the player to kind of work out how to get around that path. When it comes down to, and again, that's where that differentiation between a normal or a standard platformer and a Kaizo level platformer. In a normal platformer, you can do multiple things. Yes, you can have a set path, but maybe you can use a double jump here. Maybe you can do something like use an advanced maneuver to get around it. In a Kaizo game, again, it's basically saying, here's a checklist of 100 things you need to do perfectly. You do 99 of them, you lose this level. You do all 100 of them, you will win. Mm-hmm. And again, going back to the Monster Train Slay the Spire analogy, the games are explicitly set up that there is no one way to win. And in many cases, the player can figure out ways to get around a tough build or learn some new element just by continuing to get better at the game.
Yeah. I think a good example of this would actually be Mega Man. Let's take Mega Man 2 for example. Like you could use the P gun, the power blaster, whatever it's called. You can use that on any enemy. It's going to be harder on most of them. Some of them it's easier, but most of them it's harder. But you can beat any boss that way. You beat any enemy that way. And you have a selection of weapons kind of thing, and some will be optimal, some won't. Some a few may not even do anything, kind of thing. But like, there was never, oh, you have to use this one weapon or else you're screwed, kind of thing. There was never, like the final boss of Mega Man 2, the alien kind of thing. Like you use bubble on that thing, you 3-hit it and it's done. Use a P blaster, you're going to take it out in, I don't know, 10, 15 hits. Use the metal blades, you're probably going to take, again, 20, 30 hits. Use the crash bomber, I think you can take it out in, like 8 hits or something. And like, if this had been Sekiro kind of thing,
I was just about to say that.
Then only the bubble would have worked. And everything else would have been 0 damage.
Yeah.
Not only that, but you might not have even gotten the bubble weapon. You wouldn't have been required to get the bubble weapon before you got to the boss.
And another point there, like with something like with Mega Man, there are people who beat Mega Man only using the Mega Buster. There are those challenges. But here's the big point. That's optional. That is not the general playthrough of a Mega Man game. If you want to do that, that is entirely up to you. You can have achievements in your game for that. But you want... I think I was speaking to Tomo or some other developer about this. I remember this was the Lumo developer. That a lot of people talk about a skill ceiling, but it's also important to have a skill floor in your game. That you need to understand what is the baseline ability I am asking my player base to have in order to play this game. And with something like Mega Man, the baseline is you have to be good at platforming, and you have to be able to choose the right weapons to fight a boss. If they said that in order to, the baseline skill of Mega Man is you must be good at platforming, and you must beat every boss only using the Mega Buster and nothing else, people would be able to do that. But it would be a far smaller number than the people who did beat Mega Man.
Yeah. And then if you said that now instead of you only had that and changed it to in this map you can only use this one weapon and it's different every time, then you're going even smaller.
Yep. And again, like as we've said, what makes this discussion so tricky is that it is a very thin line between challenge and frustration. The games that we complain about being too frustrating, with a few tweaks, could have been so much better. Just as the games that we said were better could have been so much worse if a few aspects were changed.
Yep.
The Mega Man example, I think, is perfect.
Yeah. And the thing was, we were talking about Streets of Rage, and a few tweaks, and that game could be god tier kind of thing. Like if they worked with, they put in iframes in there, they put in, you able to actually jump over attacks realistically, you able to move up and downwards, not just side to side while you're jumping. Several little fixes like that, and it would be 20 times better game. 20 times, if not way better.
And this is why this kind of onboarding is so important. And just play testing as well.
Yeah.
And again, when we talk about these games being difficult and being frustrating, they can be legitimately good games. They can have a solid gameplay loop, like with Sekiro, like with Thirsty Ship. But the problem again is how the player experiences that. And this is why Nintendo is still one of the kings when it comes to approachability and onboarding. Because they know that anyone who starts playing their games is not going to be a god tier player. You can't just start your game and say, okay, here's the Kaizo challenge. Learn the game on that. They need to get the player to that point. And like you said with the Mario example, that in many cases they will train the player and the player doesn't even know that they're being trained.
That's a streamlined tutorial. That's streamlined onboarding. That is the best way to do it, if you can do it that way. And not everything can be taught that way.
Exactly.
But a lot of things can be taught that way. And the more things you teach that way, the better, in my opinion. That's what I tried to do in my last game. And, there was certain things where I couldn't do that, like the level skill tutorial. I put in a specific little kind of story cutscene for that. The fact that players were not realizing that the rock, paper, scissors theme was also a mechanic kind of thing. So, like, there was a cutscene, like the very first cutscene, where Rocky was like, "Oh, I'll take all of them. Don't worry about it," kind of thing. And he's all acting big-headed like he always does, kind of thing, and stupid. And then Sai or Violet, I can't remember which, is like, you probably should rather stick to your type advantage and just deal with that. And it was a moment in the story that was funny and entertaining. At the same time, it taught the players, hey, there's types in the game. You should probably pay attention to that. You get more damage if you attack the types. But that didn't, at the same time, you could beat a rock with a rock. You could beat a rock with a paper, and you could beat a rock with a scissors kind of thing. You were just dealing way less damage because I think it was like a 50% damage bonus if you had opposing types. If you had the type that won. So instead of doing, 1,000 damage, if you were a rock attacking a rock, you would do 1,000 damage. If you were a rock attacking a paper, then you would do 500 damage, and if you were attacking a scissors, you would do 1,500 damage. Yeah. Like you would still beat it, no matter which way you went. But if you attacked the right type, you would get more damage, and you were rewarded for that.
Yeah. And there's two more points that I want to make, and then that's going to be it for me. But going back to what you just said, Shark, about how some games are better at a streamlined or an organic tutorial, there is, of course, the grand strategy genre. And this is perhaps one of the more polarizing points, because I'm going to bring up another well-known game, Stellaris, or just Paradox Interactive as a whole. Paradox has a very hard fan base. And when I look at Stellaris right now, it has a review lifetime of almost 60,000 60,000 reviews ranked at very positive. Its fan base knows what it likes. It definitely says that to Paradox every chance they get. But every so often, as I'm scrolling down the reviews for the game, I see a negative review saying, this game is hard to learn. I can't figure out what I'm doing in this game. And when we look at games like this is where people will defend challenging and complexity. They'll say, look, this game has 60,000 reviews. So what if people complain it's hard to learn? Look at all the people who do enjoy it. And again, well, one, you have to realize Paradox Interactive is a well-known name at this point. They have I think they've almost cornered the market on grand strategy and 4X design right now. If you're an indie developer who's trying to approach your game the same way as Paradox Interactive, you are going to fall flat on your face. And again, the second point, imagine, like we've said this before, with something like Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle, that imagine having a very solid entry-level example of a genre like this, and what it could do to get people to enjoy these games. This is one of the reasons why I was kind of more positive about Chimera Squad as an entry-level take on XCOM. Is it designed for the people who have, legendary Iron Man runs of XCOM 2? Probably not. But if you've never played an XCOM game before, it is a solid way to get into it, just like Mario plus Rabbids. And if you can design a game like that can get people to play a genre, then it's going to ultimately make your game stronger for it.
Yeah, because at that point, you're not just getting people that are fans of that genre. You're getting people that are fans of that genre and people who have never played that genre or disliked the genre in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of my goals with my last game. And to build upon I want to make a clarification on one of your points. I wasn't saying that specific genres are harder to make tutorials for, but specific mechanics, kind of thing. And of course, a genre can have more of those mechanics than the other kind of thing. And strategy games, a lot of strategy games tend to have more of those complex things that can't be taught just by an icon or have the player move this direction kind of thing or any kind of thing like that, like our level scaling couldn't. But not being able to streamline a tutorial isn't a reason to not put a tutorial in there. And you need to teach. You also don't need to blast the player with thousands of tutorials at the beginning, because the human brain can only handle so much at a time. They can only focus on so much at a time. They can only focus on 1-2 things at a time. And when you put text in a game, you generally only want it to be 1 or 2 lines long. Oh, yeah. So you need to feed the tutorial to them in bite-sized chunks, one thing at a time, and generally have them practice it or experience it in some kind of way before moving on. That doesn't mean that the mechanics can't be there. You just don't teach them about it. Like in Disgaea, you didn't have to lock things behind, things. I mean, they did in Disgaea 5. But what you had to do was you could have the item world there and open so that anybody who wanted to go in there could go in there. But you don't have to teach it right at the beginning. And you don't have to lock it until the point where you teach it either. You can leave it open, and then you can just not teach it until the player is ready to be taught it, kind of thing. And I think that's a better way to do it, kind of thing. Like, you don't have to limit the people who already know it by locking it, and you don't have to teach it from the second it's unlocked.
Yeah. And how many indie games have we played where a tutorial is literally an entire screen of text? You can't even see the game screen. And that's not how you teach people. And again, tutorial and onboarding, that's another 5 hours easily.
Yeah. And you also don't, you probably don't want to go so handholdy, that it's ridiculous. Like you press up on the keyboard to move up. You press down on the keyboard to move down. You press left on the keyboard to move left.
I would argue that you do want some kind of basic control examination. You don't want to stop the game. Like a very popular option, like for platformers, that they'll have like a sign, or mailers have like a like floating text saying W S A D. Again, we have a mirror, so my fingers are pointing in opposite directions. But something again, every game is somebody's first. And somebody may need that super hand-holdy. What you don't want to do...
What you said isn't hand-holdy.
Yeah.
That's just showing the controls. Showing the controls isn't hand-holdy. Like making them go through like 5 pages of text, to find out that is the direction. That is hand-holdy.
Exactly.
So, teaching a player basic movement isn't hand-holdy, but giving them 5 pages of stuff that they cannot skip, and you shouldn't have them skip your tutorial. Your tutorial should never be skippable. ever, ever. If your tutorial is skippable, then you screwed up your tutorial. Because if your tutorial is skippable, that means players are complaining that your tutorial is bad. Then they're forced to go through it. And the solution to that is not say, oh, you can skip it. No, the solution is make your tutorial better. That's like saying your game is hard. So the solution is just hit this button and you win. Mm-hmm. That's not a solution.
Yep.
That is not a solution.
Oh, the Cuphead example. That's another hour if we get into that.
Yeah.
So I have one final point, and that's going to do it for me. And this is something this is more on the RPG side of things. Because we've been playing a lot of indie games, or indie RPGs, or RPG-like titles. And a lot of them will have on an opening splash page, or will say, this game is meant to be difficult or unfair. You have to, figure things out on your own. And like I said at the start, to me, that's just code for, we have no idea how to onboard players. So just, wander around for the next hour and see if you can figure things out. And
pretty much.
What was that?
Pretty much.
Yeah. And like that game, No Delivery, that we played the other night is very much a big example of this. And the problem that I have with these games is that they typically end up just being a mess of mechanics. That there is, again, this goes back to the Curse of the Moon and some of our previous examples, that there is a preferred way to play this game, but we're not going to give you any idea of how to play it, what's going on, or even just, any breadcrumbs to start figuring these things out.
Yeah. And to you, Tara's point there, I hope I said that right, but that's a bad tutorial. Like, if they're not explaining things that are useful, then they failed on their tutorial. They did not properly onboard you, because they should be teaching you everything that's useful. Whether you're a first time to the game, second time to the game, you've never played a game before, or you've played billions of games and you've got 3,000 hours in this game. They should be teaching things that are useful to you. Well, maybe not for the like pro strategy kind of thing, but they should be teaching you everything to get you through the base game. Like, there should not be anything that they don't teach you to get you through the base game. I mean, like, they shouldn't be, obviously teaching you, hey, here's how you can min-max kind of thing. If you do this complicated thing and this complicated thing, like, they don't need to teach you that.
They need to give you the breadcrumbs to figure this out on your own. Like Mario, again, is one of the standout examples of this. Every 3D Mario game will organically teach the player everything they need to know, but they'll do it in separate ways. Okay, here's a section that you need to do a triple jump. Okay, here's a section where you should be doing a wall jump. And then as you get further in, you're going to be into a section where you're going to need to do a triple jump into a wall jump to get through it. But that's all right, because the player already knows these concepts. It's just about applying that knowledge. A worse example would have been, okay, we're not going to even tell you that you can do a wall jump or that a triple jump works in this game.
Yeah, and you need, Mario taught you in segments. They taught you, they spread the tutorial out. They didn't bulk it all up in the middle, at the beginning, rather.
And the player doesn't know that they're in a tutorial. That's just how the levels are designed.
Yeah.
Anytime, like, here's another little, like, game design trick for any consumers or gamers watching this. Anytime a game introduces a new mechanic in a room that has no threat or penalty, that's a tutorial. Oh, and that's another point that some developers mess up on. They'll introduce a new mechanic and put it in a room where you can die or fail.
Yeah. And, that also goes into controls and everything. And, if you don't have proper controls, If you're, like that gets on to Mortal Kombat. Like Mortal Kombat is almost kind of like the Simon Says kind of thing. Like Sekiro kind of thing to a point, but only to a point in the fact of its moves.
Are very rigid. You can't.
Yeah, they're very rigid. You have to press these buttons in this exact order within this exact time frame. Yeah. Where like games like Soul Calibur are organic, and it's like, okay, you press this button, you use your sword. You press this button and you push forward and you jab with your sword. You press this button and up and you do a swing up with your sword. You press this button and down and you swing down with your sword. You press this button and back with you swing. You do a sweeping, back sweep with your sword. And like you press this button and this is a kick button, and you press high kick, low kick, all these things based on directions kind of thing. And it's very organic. It's very easy to learn.
There's multiple
and that goes with your tutorials.
Yeah.
I mean, your UI kind of thing. Like if you integrate if you integrate your controls to be easier to learn, then it's easier to teach. Same thing with your UI. If you integrate it easier to navigate and everything, then it becomes easier to learn. Yeah. And if it's easier to learn, then it's easier to teach, which means that you have to spend less effort teaching the player how to play these things, which makes it easier to streamline all of these things.
Yeah. And to be fair with Mortal Kombat, NetherRealm has been doing more work in terms of onboarding people to their fighting games. Like, the tutorial for Mortal Kombat was worlds better than the tutorial for Dragon Ball FighterZ.
Mm-hmm.
And again, Skullgirl still being like the de facto king of tutorials.
Yeah, I haven't played that one, but I'll take your word for it. And see, when you don't teach a player these things, when you don't properly onboard a player, when you force a player only one method to get through a thing, that's just frustrating gameplay. That is a frustrating point. That is a negative on your game. That's not good. Having a confusing UI that you have to click a button 9 times to get it to actually do something, that's not good. That's hard, but that's not good, kind of thing. Hard is not good, no matter what it is, Now, you can make a good game that is hard, like Dark Souls, and you make a good game. You can make a not good game. You can make a hard game that isn't good, that is just strictly you do these things or else you die, like Sekiro, which I find very, very bad and negative. But like Sekiro could have addressed these issues, and it could have been an amazing game. It still could be, if they ever updated and addressed these issues. But until they do, it's not.
Mm-hmm.
And there's same thing with Thrusty Ship. Like he could address those issues. Most of those are with level design, kind of thing.
Yeah.
In the second and third world, because the first world was really, really dang good, but the second and third world, that just got really bad.
And again, the higher you make your skill floor, the less people who are going to be willing to play your game.
Mm-hmm.
And we should probably do a topic about skill floor and skill ceiling at some point.
Yeah, we should definitely. But that doesn't mean you can't have a high skill floor.
Mm-hmm.
You just don't want to. I'd say you don't want an ultra high skill floor. You don't want the skill floor to be at the top with the skill ceiling.
Yeah.
You want a band in there, a range, rather. You don't want your skill ceiling to be 10 and your skill floor to be 10. Like if you're going for a skill ceiling of 10, maybe you want a skill floor of 4 kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Where if you're going for maybe a skill ceiling of maybe 5 kind of thing, maybe you want a skill, level, a floor of 0 or 1 or whatever it is. You don't want a skill ceiling of 5 and a skill floor of 5 like that. That's just bad design. You want a range in there.
You want the player to understand what makes this game challenging, and if the player wants to make things harder for themselves, like in Dark Souls, choosing less optimal weapons or not summoning for help, let them make that choice. You don't want to force the player to make the game harder. And that, I think, again, is where Sekiro and the other Souls games tend to falter on. That in Dark Souls, if I get stuck at a fight, I can summon help. I can upgrade my weapon. I can, change my build. I can wear better armor. If I get stuck at a fight in Sekiro, I'm banging my head against the wall for the next 3 hours until I figure out why I'm getting stuck. And there's no other way around that.
Yeah. And I had a point there. I lost it. I hate when that happens.
All right. Well, I'll give my other example while hopefully you can bring it back. Like when we played that game Fear and Hunger, that was the brutally difficult RPG where you can die within the first encounter. It is a game that is designed to be unfair. And I respect the game for that. But in that same vein, there's always that thought of how much better could a game be if there was just a little bit of onboarding? That if you give the player some element of guidance, and this will be my final point, or I'll just start rambling on again. If you have to ship your game with a strategy guide or a survival guide or anything like that, that stuff should be in your game. That should be, the basic onboarding. That if that is your solution to trying to onboard the players to sell or to have a separate hint guide, then you have lost the battle.
Yeah. A hint guide should be secondary. It should be an optional thing. Mm-hmm. Unless every copy of your game you're selling comes with the hint book. Mm-hmm. Which would only be acceptable on like some major like simulator games, where you're literally flying the airplane, or that one game where you're piloting a mech and you have this controller that is bigger than your table kind of thing. Then a book that comes with your game, you're probably $300 game with your $300 controller with your book that your 50-page manual kind of thing that literally tells you how to operate the thing. Mm-hmm. That would be the only way that kind of thing would be acceptable.
Yeah.
When there is such a level of complexity that you have to have all this custom gear kind of thing.
Or with something like with Earthbound, where there are some sections in that game that they tell you nothing. Like the infamous, you have to sit behind a waterfall for literally 5 minutes to open up a door. There is no way in heck that anyone is figuring that out on their own.
And that's bad design.
Yeah, and that's why they put the strategy guy in for free. But again,
they shouldn't have depended on the strategy guide.
Yeah.
They should have.
But again, that is an extreme example. That's not what you want your game to be. And I've said this, and this will officially be my final point. The game should give the player all the tools they need to succeed. Anytime the player must leave the game in order to learn it via, a hint guide, website, YouTuber, or Let's Play, that is a failure of onboarding.
Mm-hmm. And anytime you force a player on a specific linear combat system, that's worse than a linear story. Mm-hmm. That is way worse than a linear story. And that's what Sekiro does. It's not what Dark Souls does. Dark Souls has like a web of combat system. You can find, no matter which weapon you go, no matter which way you go, you can find a way to beat them. It'll be easier or harder depending on which path you take. But it's a web. There's multiple ways to win. Where Sekiro, you have the one way to win. And if you do not do it exactly, precisely, linearly, like they say to do it, basically, although they're not telling you which way they say, but if you don't do it that exact way, you're going to fail.
And you're going to keep failing no matter what.
It's not an interactive game. It's not even a reactive game. It's just a linear path. It is where Dark Souls is reactive and interactive kind of thing. You can choose. There is player choice. There is player agency there. Players can choose what they want to do. If they want to, I don't know, I haven't never played Dark Souls, but if they want to play an archer kind of thing, if they want to pretend they're Legolas kind of thing, they can do that. And they can beat the game that way. It probably won't be easy, but they can do it.
If you want to use...
if they want to do that in Sekiro, they're never going to finish the game.
Yeah. You can use magic in the Souls games, and they've had to work on that balance of how powerful magic is for some of those fights. I know with Dark Souls 2, they had to nerf a few spells, but that is kind of the... what's the word I want to use? That's kind of the deal you have to make. That when you give multiple options, some are obviously going to be better than others. And again, balancing choices, that we're not getting into that right now. That's going to be who knows how long of a discussion.
That's basically a meta of a game. And, most good games have metas, They may be, most good games have rotating metas if they're, a live service kind of thing.
Yeah. But there has to be options, and I think ultimately this will be it. That if I can only play if you give me options but tell me there's only one way of playing your game, then I'm not really playing the game anymore. I am following a checklist. Yeah. And what you said there, Shark, about linear combat, that kills me for a lot of games. And we see this with boss designs, where, this boss, you're fighting him, but you can only hurt him under, when he's stunned for 3 seconds. So the entire fight becomes just this set order of, I gotta wait for him to do this, stun, get a hit, repeat. And again, if you're playing like a Zelda game or an action-adventure game where there's more of that puzzle element, that's perfectly fine. But if you're selling me on a unique combat system or a great focus on combat and then tell me, but you can only fight the boss one way, then all that combat gets thrown out the window.
Yeah. What you need, what would be better in that system is, like, if he's not stunned, he takes very minimum damage. But if he is stunned, he takes a lot of damage. It's very simple. Like it's still the same. You're not changing really anything about the boss fight. You're just changing the values. Whether when you attack when he's not stunned, you do 1 damage. When you attack when he's stunned, you do 30 damage. And it's not 0 and 30. There's not the lack of choice. There is a choice, and with that choice of 1 damage, there's actually tons of choices because there's thousands of different, probably 20 different weapons you have, kind of thing. And there's 20 different 1 damages you can do, whichever way you want to do it. Of course, they don't all have to be 1 damage. Some of them could be 2, some of them could be 3, some of them could be 5. Depending on which way it goes. But you still have the optimal way, which deals 30, kind of thing. And
it's the Mega Man example again.
Yeah, it's back to Mega Man. Because Mega Man is exactly that. You have multiple ways, and multiple damages based off of which way you do it, and some ways are easier and harder, but there's always multiple ways to do it, and you can pick which way you want to go. Player agency is there, and player agency is so important in a combat system. That is where the combat system is the focus. It's not so important in a game where the combat system isn't the focus, kind of thing. Like a Zelda game, like a tactical RPG or a regular RPG, the combat system is not the focus in those games. The story or the adventure or the puzzles are more the focus. Or maybe the combat system is more of a focus than the puzzle, but like a lot of the emphasis on the combat is taken away because the combat isn't it may be the main focus, but it's not the only focus kind of thing. So you're dividing the focus kind of thing rather than but like when you're talking about like a Dark Souls or like a 2D side-scrolling combat game, combat is the only focus. It is basically the only thing that's there. And if you're going linear on that, you're just killing everything. Mega Man, combat is pretty much the only thing. Mm-hmm. And if you're going linear on a Mega Man, then you just screwed up.
Yeah. And to end this cast on, it basically comes down to this. There are people who will play Dark Souls Soul Level 1 challenges using the knife. They will do it, they will want to do it, they will enjoy doing it. Mm-hmm. You don't want to force your entire player base to do that as the standard design.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure most of those people, if that was the only way to get in the first place, they probably wouldn't have even been willing to do that the first time. Yeah. Because they wanted, they had to play it and get onboarded, easier through the other methods before they go into that super challenging, challenge that they made for themselves. Like most Pokemon players that play, what was that mode? Where you only get to have one Pokemon in each area, and when they die, they permanently die.
I don't play Pokemon.
Well, it's not an official mode in the game. It's the challenge. It's basically the Kaizo of Pokemon kind of thing. Basically, what it was once your Pokemon died, you had to permanently send them into the box. They were permanently dead. Mm-hmm. You couldn't heal them, kind of thing. Once they died, KO, they're out forever. And you could only catch one Pokemon in each area, and it had to be the first Pokemon that you ran into. Mm. But if you were forced into that, pretty much nobody would have played Pokemon in the beginning. Pretty much nobody. Nobody would have liked that. The people that like that now only like that because they like the base game and wanted more of a challenge, so they stepped it up by doing that kind of thing. And if they were just given that to begin with, and only that, and they couldn't play the base game, then Pokemon wouldn't be popular the way it is now. Mm-hmm. Pokemon would have probably, red and blue would have probably been the only colors.
All right, but I think with that, I do have to get going, and I think that is a good point to end this cast on. I think we had some really great topics for our show today.
Yeah, I think it went quite well.
All right, so for everyone watching live or recorded, thank you for tuning in. We will be back for our next show Sundays around 4:30 EDT. You will find links to all of our stuff down below. You can follow me on Twitter at GWBicer, as well as our Discord channel.
Yeah, and you can find me on Discord, YouTube, and Twitter. All links will be down below. I would encourage you to find me on Discord because that's where I'm most active, and I help other developers there. Anybody who has a question, I help them, as best as I can. Which I don't have the answer to everything, but I have the answer to some things, and things that I don't know the answer to, I can have suggestions on where you can possibly find that answer. So, hit me up on Discord, and and you can come check out our game Project Triad, which we will be playtesting on the 18th, about almost 1 week from now, a little bit less than 1 week, this Saturday. And you can come play Project Triad. All
right. So, with that said, everyone, have a great rest of your Sunday. I'll be back later tonight for our regular game streams, and come back for daily discussions on game design here and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. Until next time, take care.